All right, we're following developments in America for you live from the U.S. Millions of voters across the United States will tomorrow decide which party controls both houses of Congress, 40 governorships nationwide, and the balance of power in almost all state legislatures. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives are on the ballot, with 35 Senate seats in play. Republicans and Democrats, the two dominant parties alike, have brought out their heavy hitters to make the closing argument in a race seen as reshaping the direction of the country that could either embolden the presidency of Donald Trump or provide a firm check on his agenda.
They call it the Trump factor, the president rallying his base at events in multiple states this past weekend, with polling consistently showing that the Republican Party's grip on the House of Representatives is in jeopardy.
We got to win Congress, in all fairness, just because the Democrats won't be doing that. The Democrats are going to be raising your taxes. They're not cutting your taxes. So I have to put a little caveat. We got to win Congress. Got to win the House. I think we're doing great in the House. I think we're doing great in the Senate. But who knows, right? Who knows? You got to get out to vote. But I will say, there is an electricity in the air, the likes of which I and you have not seen since the 2016 election.
A 7-point advantage, according to an NBC Wall Street Journal poll that came out Sunday, with 50% of likely voters preferring a Democratic-controlled Congress, while 43% want Republicans in charge. In the race for control of the Senate, Republicans do appear to hold an advantage, with many Democratic incumbents running in rural states that President Trump won handily in 2016. With the opposition party hoping for the much-vaunted blue wave that could be curtailed by the enthusiasm President Trump enjoys among his core supporters.
You get to vote in what might be the most important election of our lifetimes, maybe more important than 2008. Because America's at a crossroads right now. There is a contest of ideas going on right now about who we are and what kind of country we are going to be. Health care for millions is on the ballot. A fair shake for working families is on the ballot. And most importantly, the character of our nation is on the ballot.
Early voting breaking records for midterm elections, far surpassing the numbers seen in a similar election in 2014, while the cost of this election is expected to exceed $5 billion, overwhelmingly fueled by energy on the left. Sherwin, Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
Right, this is so important. Let's get a little bit more from our correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. He joins us live. Sherwin, from what you've outlined, I mean, the stakes here are incredibly high, aren't they?
And this is why you see the two principals of the respective parties taking it very, very seriously. I mean, the number of states that Barack Obama and Donald Trump have visited over the last few days is quite astounding. They are crisscrossing this in support of candidates within Senate races or in House races because Democrats want to take control of at least one of those houses, Francis. It's looking more likely that they will do so in the House rather than the Senate. And I can explain that to you in terms of the map behind me. And then you also have Republicans who want to ensure that what happened to Barack Obama in 2010 does not happen to Donald Trump in 2018. Both houses of Congress were controlled by the Democrats when Barack Obama was elected in 2008. They lost 63 seats in the midterm elections in terms of the House in 2010. And the Republicans were able to check the Obama agenda to a large extent, undermining the agenda that he sought to implement in this country. So there is a real fear on the Republican side that this could be payback from the Democrats if Donald Trump loses the House.
Explain the electoral system a little bit for us, the role of the House versus the Senate and the current sort of balance of power that we see.
Well, there are 435 seats in the House of Representatives, and there are 100 senators. 2 senators come from each state in this country. And there's a big debate in certain quarters, certainly from the Liberal side, that a state with such a huge population, very many millions in California, only has 2 senators representing a majority of people like that, as opposed to perhaps a small rural state like North Dakota or South Dakota, Francis, that might only have a few 100,000 residents in those states and yet have an equal representation in the Senate. So essentially all the houses of House of Representative seats every 4 years every 2 years, I beg your pardon, is re-elected, and senators, I believe, serve a 6-year term. So this is why you see the staggered ratio in terms of only 35 seats on the Senate side are up for grabs in this election, and all 435 seats in the House of Representatives. Francis, if you'll indulge me, let me explain why it's so difficult for Democrats to take the Senate in this race, because this is the electoral map. The red colors showing the deep Republican support, and the blue patches is where Democratic candidates traditionally do well. This is the 2016 map in terms of pushing Donald Trump's victory. And as you see, we have a Senate race, an incumbent Democratic senator in Montana, an incumbent Democratic senator in North Dakota, in Indiana, in Florida, in Missouri, and not in Texas. That's where Republicans are trying to hold on to a Senate seat. And what that tells you is that these are very rural states. A lot of these states went for Donald Trump in 2016 by some 30 points. So those Democratic incumbents are very, very vulnerable going into this election. So for Democrats to do well and to maybe retake the Senate as well, this is the difficulty that those senators, those incumbent Democratic senators are facing. It's a little bit different in the House because a lot of these rural states also have big cities. And what we're seeing in terms of suburban voters, the outlying areas of those cities, the Democratic wave is spreading into those rural areas now, and a particularly strong showing from women in this country, from college-educated women in this country, is really what is going to make the difference for Democrats in those rural states and in their chances of retaking the House of Representatives.
Well, Sherwin, Donald Trump is talking about this electricity in the air. We know there's been a lot of speculation. Will his choice for Supreme Court, will his other moves rally Democrats to go to the polls, or rally Republicans? Do you expect at least a huge turnout either way?
There is a huge turnout already, Francis. The early polling, up to 36 states allow for early voting in this country, and we are seeing extraordinary numbers that I can share with you right now. In the state of Arizona, they're up 217% in terms of early voting. Florida's up 131%. Nevada, 364%. Texas is up 767%. The turnout is huge. We understand there's a great deal of enthusiasm about in terms of a new voting bloc. The youth vote, the 18 to 25 segment, is showing up at this election. What people need to understand historically is that midterm elections tend to favor the Republican Party because they tend to bring out retirees, older white voters in this country turn up in the midterms. Democrats seem to rally more people during presidential elections. This is where the test for the Democratic Party lies in this election. We are seeing enthusiasm not only from Republicans by virtue of the support that Donald Trump still engenders in this country. Let's not undermine the support that this president has. He has his support. They've been consistent. It's been around 40%. It's whether the 60%, if Democrats can turn out the 60%, they win this election. Therein lies the test. But in terms of numbers, we are seeing Republican enthusiasm, but we are seeing Democratic enthusiasm match them or beat them in certain districts. And this is what it comes down to. Can you turn out your vote, and can you change the result at the end of the day?
Well, last question. I think you've outlined very well the worst case scenario for the president is kind of he becomes a lame duck, where it becomes very difficult to do things. But it doesn't sound very likely, the picture you're painting.
Well, it becomes difficult if these two parties, Francis, decide that they cannot work across the aisle. Essentially, the history of this country has been where either there's been a Democratic-controlled House and a Republican president or Senate, and so, and generally the three should meet in the middle. And so if you see Democrats take back at least one lever, it will be incumbent on both parties to really start working together as history has taught them, because the divisiveness we are seeing, it's my agenda or the high road, is really not moving the country forward legislatively. In terms of all legislators working together. Bills used to be passed in the United States with support from the minority party, and we haven't seen that, particularly on the tax bill. You didn't see that when Obama passed Obamacare in 2009-10, was it? And so we're seeing this partisanship really stymie whoever is in the White House. And so if Republicans lose one house, it'll be incumbent on both parties to try and find a middle road, the centrist approach, which seems to have gone by the wayside.
All right, we'll follow your reports throughout the day tomorrow. Thank you very much, Sherwin. Bryce-Pease, our correspondent in the U.S., reporting live. And you heard the former U.S. President Barack Obama saying this is perhaps even more important than 2008, the political future of America at stake.